The mountain main is fast, but we are off the turf for West Virginia Derby Day. Gone is the era of undefeated Soto and Kentucky Derby winning Minette Bird, and the purse is just a shell of its former self. Used to be $750,000, but a $400,000 horse race is cause to sit up and pay attention to this racing region, and it's a big deal at Mountaineer. And I lived it for a lot of years, West Virginia Derby. Unfortunately, off the turf of the mountain main is fast. Today's Derby, not too bad. 4 stakes winners in an 8-horse field, and 8's not a bad size by modern stakes standards. As usual, though, the Governor looks like a better horse race. I think I added up like 400,000, 4 million rather, 4 million in total earnings for that field, with an interesting emphasis on sharp early speed. And for flavor on the undercard, we got a mile 3/4 race and a long-awaited return to the phenomenal undefeated 10 for 10 Silent Rule. Unfortunately, she's got just one foe to face off with her, but it's a formidable foe and should make for a good match race at least. Also, knock on wood, the 4th race did not scratch down quite as low as I thought it might, because that race has wall-to-wall speed. So I like the undercard, and the Derby looks intriguing to boot. So let's get down to business here. We're going to start off nice and easy with a maiden special weight race for West Virginia breds. And welcome, and I am Mark Patterson. You're in the dungeon. This is 5 furlong distance. And I think Ronnie Brown scratched the outside horse in here, correct? Who was coming up from Charlestown. Charlestown is the seat of West Virginia bred power, though, and still represented by McKee. McKee's have a horse in later on. Otherwise, you wouldn't see hide nor hair of them in northern West Virginia. They would not come slumming at Mountaineer, but they've got Victory Song in the 5th race here. I'm sorry, the 1st race, Victory Song. Victory Song's been well supported in both outings, which can be a sign a horse has some talent. Was 2-1 first time out. Now, when a horse is that kind of a price, usually in debut, it means the runner has shown something in the morning, or the word is getting around the backstretch. Victory Song loses that by 14 lengths, comes back and gets pounded again to 5-2 favoritism. So at that point, I kind of wonder, is that just a bad field maybe on July 30th? And it did not look like a banner bunch, but still probably tougher than what Victory Song takes on here. The winner that I think it runs 2nd and 3rd going into that or something of that nature. The 3rd finisher might have been a first-time starter out of an obscure outfit. So it wasn't a double tough maiden special weight race by Charlestown standards, but you're coming to Mountaineer, so it's a different game. And it's an easier game. A horse that I would look at here, Arapahoe Nation on the inside. Arapahoe Nation. Yeah, we've got 4 stakes winners in this afternoon's West Virginia Derby. I think J.J. Gray's going to be a really short-priced favorite in there. A horse who was undefeated at a rod of ground on conventional dirt. So something to be said for that. Might be a runner with some upside that can go on and do a little something to represent the West Virginia Derby. And that horse, I think, is going to be a pretty short price, all things considered. Steve Asmussen's in town. I think he's won the thing 5 or 6 times. And I can't recall Kenny McPeak running anything at Mountaineer, but he is showing up for the West Virginia Derby. So he must feel like he's got a pretty good contender in there this afternoon. So we've got some interesting horses, some headline horses on the card. Real bummer, though, that the Silent Rule race scratches down to just 2, but she still has to square off with the horse that I wanted to see her go against. Juan Pablo's back on track. Interesting to see which way the money's going to go there. I plan to bet on Back on Track. I'm going to give you guys a preview right now. It'll be Back on Track for me because Silent Rule's been away from the game for about a year, and that's a long, long time. Plus, in the absence of other competitors, especially Mama Marge coming out of there, the focus is going to be on who can top who, and Back on Track is very fast. At least as a born-again speed, didn't show much speed elsewhere. But since coming east and into Juan Pablo's care, has been really rapid through the early stages and has Silent Rule pinned down closer to the rail there. So has the recency. Maybe an advantage, slight advantage in post positions there. And maybe an advantage with a focus thrown even more towards early speed, which Back on Track might have a little more of than Silent Rule. But I'm a big Silent Rule fan. In fact, Jaybird, who's a friend of mine, gave me one of her shoes and a win picture earlier in her career when I thought she might turn out to be something special at a point when she was about 6 for 6 or 7 for 7. And I think I bet about 300 to win on her in one of her races where she was chalked. So anyways, as interesting as a two-horse race can be, well, your second race probably is. Just getting back to the opener here a little bit, and we are still, I guess, 9 or 10 minutes to post here. A horse I would look at, Arapahoe Nation on the inside. This is a first-time starter, and I'm not real big on betting first-time starters. It's kind of a pick in the poke thing, but Jamie Poole does tend to get him cranked up first time out of the box and will not tip his hand with workouts. Doesn't do it. He makes sure to hold them down in the morning because that's his mindset. He wants to trick somebody. He wants to sneak up on somebody. That's how Jamie rolls. And Arapahoe Nation has got a full sibling named Zen Nation, who your regular denizens of the mountain game have to be familiar with. And Zen Nation, I think, is a 500 hitter, maybe 7 for 14 or something like that. Yeah, maybe even a little bit higher percentage. Other than that, Zen Nation, who's got the requisite speed and did win as a first-time starter too. So all that could bode pretty well for Arapahoe Nation. And don't get taken and or duped by Jamie's normal slow work routine. When you look at Arapahoe Nation, 51-1, 52-2, 50 and a fifth. Win, lose, or draw. I guarantee you, Arapahoe Nation's a lot faster than that, baby. Mike Baird, who's won a lot of these West Virginia bred things, has Califragilistic on the outside, who's by the same sire as Arapahoe Nation. Arapahoe Nation is out of Buchan, and Buchan's been a pretty good producer. Califragilistic on the outside. I ran second, first time to the post at 5-1 there, and stalked the pace proficiently and fought a little bit in the late stages. I think more was expected second time out at 4-5. Califragilistic just blows a soft lead and a clear lead there and regressed about 12 points on the Beyer Speed Fig scale. So that's not what you wanted to see second time out for Califragilistic. And now they're bringing up Charlestown. Now they're bringing in Team Charlestown in the presence of Victory Song, who was hard to load in both outings, but got away okay both times and was close enough to the first call in those 4.5 furlongs to indicate that the Califragilistic may well have a fight in their hands for the early lead here. And who knows how much speed Arapahoe Nation might show from the inside. That 1 3/4 race, by the way, a little bit later on, is going to be a doozy to attempt a handicap because I think there's only like one proven stayer in the race. And man, if they don't try to run that far, at least 1.5 miles, the marathon distance cutoff, then who knows what they're going to do in 1 3/4. And 1 3/4, when we get to that one, they will start out of the 6 furlong chute and come past the wire once. And the second time they get to the wire, it counts. So a flavorful card at the place the action peaks this afternoon. Last year, when I did no Derby commentary, I almost felt like, and I put this on X, I misplaced my soul somewhere. Then you've got the Bobsey twins in here. You've got the usual suspects, All Roads to Tennis and the Groom's Jewel, who managed somehow to land on the same trifecta ticket on July the 7th. There, one's a current Devon Ewell horse, another's a former Devon Ewell horse. And these two are combined. Is this a great country or what? 0 for 70. 0 for 70. These two are combined, and they've banged out about 80,000 in total career earnings between the two of them, huh? Okata was a second last time out, first time off the claim. Please, if somebody has a clue why Dennis Cluley claimed this horse, Okada, at almost 10-1 off that abysmal form, then please tell me. Could not have been happy the way Okada performed for his 12-5. Did come back to improve. A lot of times they do for Cluley, but man, was that a bad field. Oh, was that a bad field. Did I say that was a slow field? And then some. And I certainly think a couple of these have already shown an ability to run way faster than Okada probably possesses. And another one could have that kind of talent. Arapahoe Nation down on the inside. So I'm going to go over and check out the tote board here and see what's going on. And it is 4 minutes to post, and Arapahoe Nation is dead on the board at the 12-1. His Victory Song's a favorite at 9-5. And Califragilistic, maybe named for that old-time Disney movie, Super Califragilistic Expialidocious. Was that a song from Mary Poppins? Did Dick Van Dyke sing that song or was it Julie Andrews? I don't know. I really don't. Who do you guys like in the Derby a little bit later on? I'll get there in the comments and check it out, what your opinions are. I posted on social media that Steve Asmussen in town has won the race, I think, is it 6 times? And Dennis McPeak, Kenny McPeak, who never runs at Mountaineer. I can't recall him starting anything at Mountaineer. Another luminary, thoroughbred luminary. And then you've got Seffi Joseph, also won the Derby a few years back with the good horse who went on to do greater things, Skippy Longstocking. But to me, the most intriguing trainer in the night's 8th race, and I'll tell this story a couple of times during the course of this afternoon's proceedings, is Amador Sanchez. Do you guys remember Super Ocho? Super Ocho, who set most of the pace in the Breeders' Cup Sprint. I think in 2021, was it, or 2022 maybe? Whichever season, Amador Sanchez snuck in here. I don't think he'd ever run a horse at Mountaineer. With Super Ocho, who had a 2-turn turf form from Chile, of all things, and kind of a bland one to boot. And urban legend has it that he walked through the windows, slipped on up there and bet about $2,000 to win on Super Ocho, who just mauled that field with a raw final time for 5.5 of 103. It might have been the strongest ever non-stakes performance in the history of the facility for Super Ocho, who would go on to set most of the pace in the Breeders' Cup Sprint. So Amador Sanchez means business when he comes to Mountaineer. He's a clever guy, a very clever guy. And even when you get beyond Wayne's Law, who I think has a chance to wire this West Virginia Derby, by the way, he's got a couple of others in. He got, I think, a good break with a couple of pace scratches in the 9th race, which could open it up for his Ace Ventura Pet Detective to go out there and control the lead. But a horse he's got in today that I like. And I thought you'd get more scratches in this race, to be honest about it. The 4th race, you talk about wall-to-wall speed, quality speed, unfrontable speed, and the presence of a Jamming Cameron, a 5.56 champ. Trigger Points, no slouch either in the early speed department. And then Beach Colt on the outside, Beach Colt. I think you might want to pencil him in as Amador Sanchez's likeliest one of the day. I plan to bet on Beach Colt, unless the price goes short or I see some kind of a bias emerge that right now I don't anticipate. Although during my tenure at Mountaineer, it seemed like we were plagued year after year by some kind of an anti-rail bias. They would soup the track up in a very unbecoming, self-conscious manner because they wanted to see track records to affirm what we'd done to assemble a good Derby field, and somehow managed at the same time to make the inside dead. And the surface itself and that negative rail thing played far too big a role in several West Virginia Derbies. So here's hoping for a fair and level playing field, a Fairmount, Maine, for this afternoon's racing. And I see they're on the track right now. And good to see that you guys remember post time. Is somebody said Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. Oh, my brother and my dad used to watch that movie. I don't think I ever sat through it. I could hear the music from the other side of the house. Glad to see you guys remembered, most of you guys anyways, for the most part, the special post time this afternoon at 5 o'clock for the West Virginia Derby. And I see familiar faces in the comments section. Anthony says, hi, Mark. West Virginia Derby, as you said, a shell of what it once was. 2007 was there and the place was packed and hot. You have a good crowd today, Anthony. I don't know. I'm obviously not there. And I'm not sure if I've got any friends left there either to call and check on what's going on with the crowd. So welcome in, guys, and happy wagering for all. I plan to get loose today at the windows and let it fly a little bit. I don't know about the first race, though. Jamie Poole, I don't think bets for all his conniving to get prices on his horses, I'm not at all sure that he wagers. It's just in his nature to be secretive. But that said, I'm not sure Arapahoe would be this high. If Arapahoe Nation, we're actually live there. And Arapahoe Nation is 13-1 right now. Yeah, 13-1. I guess that the daily double still in play, even though we only have 2 competitors in race number 2. And judging from the double wheel pace, it looks pretty clear like Silent Rule is going to be favored over Back on Track, who certainly turned over a new leaf when coming east at Back on Track. Silent Rule is not ill-equipped to get in a front end fight because she's got a speed gear when she's called upon. It's her incredible versatility, heart, and racehorse-like attitude that I think has distinguished her. And I'll tell you a couple of Silent Rule stories for behind the scenes when we get to that race. But for now, I'm going to step aside so you guys can bet on and watch the first. Somebody sound the CAW alarm. They're in a house, baby. $26,000 strong to win on Victory Song. And you know what? Victory Song's best buyer and Califragilistic's best buyer were almost identical. Both horses have been to the post twice. Both ran okay. Both have some early speed. So it's not like Caw has some deep insight that you and I are not privy to. No key race info or anything concerning Victory Song. Nothing like that. Caw simply knows the difference when it comes to West Virginia breds, at least, between CT and MNR. It was really that simple. So Caw bet out the yin yang on the difference between CT and MNR, and they were correct. 1-5 on Victory Song. What I can't believe is the disparity in daily double prices. And when I noticed this, I got down with a 5 and 7 ticket, because with Silent Rule, it's only paying $3 and some change, and it's paying 5-1 with Back on Track. Even if Silent Rule, despite the year away, is a likelier winner than Back on Track, is she that much likelier than Back on Track, who's unbeaten and untested since traveling east and looks like a whole new mare? Does Back on Track? Not to mention the questions the 12 months on the sidelines raises about a horse like Silent Rule. So I did punch a ticket. I didn't bet to win on Victory Song. I did punch a daily double ticket. And I did apprise you guys that I was going to bet on Back on Track. Well, I don't have to now because I'm alive in the daily double. Second race, screwy condition. This had to be a misprint, or somebody missed it when they were proofing the condition book. I think they outsourced the book at Mountaineer. I'd be surprised if it's written on site by anybody in the racing office. Anyways, you get a load of this. Allowance optional claiming, either non-winners twice in 2026 or non-winners period since May 9th, 2025. Well, the second clause is a bit superfluous, is it not? Because if you haven't won a race since May of 2025, then obviously you haven't won twice in 2026. So that one got passed. The quality control people, they probably inverted the dates on those two conditions. Doesn't matter, because what we have is a match race, and it's compelling by match race standards. I'm not going to get negative today and get into any deep explanations about how match races are created and born. But there is more at play here than simple fear on the rest of these connections and on behalf of the rest of these entrants of Silent Rule and or Back on Track. There's more at work behind the scenes in a case like this. There are reasons this happens. There are reasons it shouldn't happen. But it is what it is, and we have what we have here. We have two horses going to the post. Silent Rule is 10-4-10. I thought she was retired. I haven't asked Jay Bird about her in quite some time. Silent Rule, it was one of my biggest bets in years when she beat Back to Ohio there, and she was almost even money there. And they wagered on that one like it was a match race. And Silent Rule ticked triple figs on the Beyer scale there, did Silent Rule. How many Ohio bred fillies or mares do that? Silent Rule. Silent Rule really showed what she was. Her third trip to the post when she was 18-1, which thing doesn't fit. She's never been higher than 2-1 aside from that, and hasn't been as high as even money at any point since, but she was 18-1 in a stakes race. And I remember the race, and there was all kinds of quick early speeds in there, and she's pinned down along the inside part of the track, which I don't think was even any good on November the 25th, year of our Lord 2024. And Silent Rule showed that she's quite a racehorse with that speed dueling victory. She was just tenacious. She would go on later to prove she can get a distance of ground, and she can also rate behind the leaders and then swoop on in the second quarter, although I don't think that strategic option is quite available here from the inside post position. in a virtual match race, an absolute match race, not a virtual match race. It is a freaking match race. So Silent Rule was cross-entered in some kind of a stakes today at Thistledown. I would presume against the boys. And they decided to run her here instead, Silent Rule, who's been outside the state restricted ranks a couple of times. She just mauls 3 other than Allowance Field at Mahoning. Those weren't Ohio breds. Silent Rule, who again is 10 for 10. Silent Rule. The story is behind the scenes. John Hochtel, the owner on Silent Rule, Lori Donato, a good friend of mine, former chief steward in Ohio, told me she got Hochtel into the business a few years back, quite a few years back, I guess. And he's kind of a cowboy character who works hard and knows his way around a racehorse, John Hochtel. And anyways, Mr. Hochtel claims that he got Silent Rule for free in lieu of a boarding bill that somebody didn't want to pay on Silent Rule. So we got the horse instead of the money. So you think he might have gotten the better of that deal? Oh, Silent Rule instead of whatever, 25, 35 bucks a day, something like that. The board Silent Rule. A little bit curious they've never went hunting for bear with Silent Rule, because wouldn't you have to know how good she is and eventually get to the bottom of her? But they have been very disciplined with the management here on Silent Rule and have kept her at home in Ohio. This is her first start outside of the Buckeye State. And for the most part, if either running against fellow Ohio breds or taking advantage of what conditions she does possess outside the state restricted program there. Silent Rule, I think, has lived more at Mountaineer, though. This is her home than she has in Ohio. So she's going to be really comfortable over the mountain main in her Silent Rule. Now we come to the absence, which is a potentially sticky wicket here with Silent Rule. And I put up a banner there, impromptu, 1 to 5, CAW alert, which I think somebody should sound. There was 26,000 put the win on Victory Song in that race. And they're onto the track at 4 minutes to post right now. There's Silent Rule. It's mid-80s outside. And Silent Rule just a little bit sweated up, just in a healthy way. She does not wear front wraps. Silent Rule. There's a chance they tried to breed her, and she didn't catch. That is a possibility. But if she needed that time because of some kind of physical infirmities, then that changes the whole ball game, I would say, doesn't it? With the Silent Rule. Now, Bernardini's got good statistics with horses that have been away this long. I'm a little skeptical of those formulator stats stuff because I've never thought of Jay as necessarily a comeback conditioner or as if dead fit horses off the bench are quite his forte. He would probably make an exception with Silent Rule, though, in some attempt to keep her unbeaten. As far as the Silva goes, back on track, intriguingly enough, never showed jump one of speed out there in SoCal. Now, she did win some races out there, Del Mar, stuff like that, usually stalking the pace back on track. But she reminds me of Larimar. When Larimar came here and got into Juan Pablo's care, she just put on the afterburners and developed another gear and was just a different horse. Some of them are when they come to Silva's barn, whatever the methods. Back on track, he was high on her because she gets trounced for 10,000 at Santa Anita. And his first start with her was to go to Thistledown, which he only does with horses he really likes, to run on a 4-life allowance. And she just rolls that field. Though those were not good horses. Stubbold ended up in here for $5,000, but it's the way she did it and it's the number. And then in her next one, back on track, displays her 5 furlong wears with her born again speed to be all over a 22-1 opening quarter there. At 5H, that is flying, baby. So at this point, the knock is she hadn't beaten anybody back on track. Well, you can't say that anymore because on July the 15th, she faced a much better field. And the place horse in there, one Smokin' Rita, I think had won like 4 of her last 5 and high quality upper claimers and allowances in Ohio. One Smokin' Rita, who's the real deal, and back on track, just ruined her, just embarrassed her. Back on track just blew to the front under wraps. So back on track has this born again speed gear that she did not used to possess. So as is the case with almost every match race that's ever been contested, this is almost certainly going to be decided by the time they bank into that turn, guys. Whereas when Mama Marge was still in here and it was still a fuller field, then the jock on Silent Rule may have had the option to play the versatility card and maybe tuck back and hope that Mama Marge could go out there and deplete back on track. But now the jock does not have that luxury. He's got a gun from the get-go on Silent Rule, who was 1-5 here with her unbeaten record. She's been away a year though, and back on track looks just so good and so quick lately that I did what I felt I needed to do in the daily double. I'm alive to the 7. Believe it or not, though, I'm still going to root for Silent Rule against my money because I'm a huge fan of this mare. And Jaybird was kind enough to gift me one of her shoes and one of her win pictures last season. So sit back and enjoy this one, guys. I take no pleasure in that one, guys. I'm a huge Silent Rule fan, and she has put a lot of money in my pocket. Even more today, she put in my pocket because she was crazy over a bet. In my opinion, it wasn't just a matter of parity, and I really laid this out beforehand, so I'm not redboarding. But Back on Track was a likelier winner, clearly the likelier winner. And I don't want to pound the reasons to death, but Jay Bird's not really an off the bench conditioner. And a year off raises more questions than sharpness and fitness. It brings physical issues also into play. And it's hard to just overstate just how crazy good Back on Track has been with her born again speed since she came east into Juan Pablo Silva's care. So such a predictable result in 5-2. If you ever find a better 5-2 value than Back on Track was there and the virtual match race, then let me know. The jock was sitting kind of chilly, or I think he maybe could have. Or he maybe could have put that issue to bed a little bit earlier. Do not enjoy seeing Silent Rule meet her Waterloo. If for no other reason, that shoe's not going to be worth much. The shoe that Jay Bird gifted me. I thought she ran pretty well, all things considered. She's a gamer. She's a racehorse, Silent Rule. And if she doesn't have physical infirmities, they're going to compromise her moving forward. You might get a different story 2 or 3 starts down the road if she gets a rematch with Back on Track, although I think it's far likelier that she will return to her native Ohio and to the cushier state restricted confines, I would say. Silent Rule. $12 and change on that double? Oh, wow. I couldn't believe when I checked the will pay grid, and it's 3-5 with Victory Song to Silent Rule and better than 5-1 to Back on Track. In what universe is there supposed to be that disparity between those daily double payoffs? Just unbelievable opportunity there to knock down a good score in the early double on West Virginia Derby Day, guys. So coming up, we have a 5 furlong race that was slated to go on the grass, instead make it on that fast mountain main. They produced a front-running inside winner, a horse that was pinned down close to the inside, and a front runner that was buffered too wide out from the rail. Those races were both preordained to have front-running winners. You're talking about a 5 furlong maiden race in the opener with hopeless professional maidens and green horses. There's no way that's not going to be wired. And then the second race, it's a match race, so Speed's going to win. It doesn't mean Speed's going to be invincible this afternoon. Did anybody catch the final time on that? I was so excited about my score that I didn't check on it. Would somebody please let me know what the final time was on that clocking? I'm curious as to what kind of fractions and final Back on Track put up. And what work that has been on the part of Juan Pablo Silva. You don't just get trounced. I don't care if it's Santa Anita or not in a $10,000 claimer and then come here and start to do what Back on Track has done without a lot of that being attributed to the horseman, to the trainer. 12 and change, okay. So the track has not been souped up for the big day. If that required 12 and change for Back on Track, it was under a drive to the final stages there. So she was all out to win that from Silent Rule. I used to hate it when Montner would soup the track up for West Virginia Derby Day to the point where the final times, the raw times were just ridiculous, as if somehow we needed that as an affirmation that we put together some good fields. Well, like Soto and Mind That Bird. I thought it was kind of Bush League, the way we used to speed the track up for the West Virginia Derby. Might tell some more stories about West Virginia Derby. Track bias is past, kind of like the ghost of Christmas past, the ghost of West Virginia Derby surfaces past as the day proceeds. As far as this 5H job goes, this is for never threes. And we're talking about fillies and mares for $15,000. I think that there was a scratch in here, correct? Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I'm going to check it out now as we continue to talk here, guys. Yeah, Artel I would have been a really short price in here and comes out. So it's no longer a walkover for anybody. The one horse is being bet heavily is 8-5 up there, Emily's Joy. Emily's Joy is a one-time winner on dirt and a one-time winner on synthetics there, Emily's Joy. Emily's Joy exits some kind of a stakes out there at Indy Boy. They make you run out there. And the time before was second for 12-5 and some kind of a 12-5 race, which was probably an on-lifer at this 5 furlong distance. This horse wins going 6 furlongs from the back half of the field. So Emily's Joy doesn't really possess 5 furlong kind of speed, but Emily's Joy did run well, going 5/8 there. The thing about Emily's Joy is the synthetic numbers and the turf numbers are way bigger than her dirt numbers. Emily's Joy, and she comes down for her lowest claiming price. I'm sorry, she was in for 12-5 a couple of starts back, and does drop out of a stakes there. So I guess she's going soundly if they had her in a stakes race last time at odds of some 94-1 there. But when horses tell you who they are, when it comes to what surface they want to run on, believe them because they mean it. And Emily's Joy does have the one dirt win, but the number came back a lot lower than what she's capable of on synthetics and also on turf, which I guess could add some intrigue here, even if she's 9-5 plus. This is not a horse necessarily that's going to defend her rail. So she'll need a little bit of racing luck, maybe two, Emily's Joy. Now, she's got no compunctions about closing, even at a kickback, because she did so on synthetics there. It's not just like she can only rally on turf. Emily's Joy. Israel Acevedo is the guy who had Williston Way is the best horse on the grounds here. Doing a whole slew of open allowances a few seasons back, so he knows the ropes here. And he's doing well at Mountain this year, too, so he's a factor as well. Sending out Emily's Joy. The 2-horse, Miss Q. Miss Q is 3-1 and may go down a little bit from there. A last out allowance winner at Charlestown, Miss Q. I think Miss Q might have been at the catbird seat. There was a couple dueled in front of her, 21 and change. Now she's got a couple of snappy 4.5 furlong wins there, Miss Q. And also another place in a race that was closer friendly. So she likes to sit back just a little bit, but always within full sight of the action. And should get some kind of a trip here, and probably will be closer to the pace than Emily's Joy. I've got the form pulled up on an alternative screen, and I'm going to go back and double check what the race shape was on her victory last time at Charlestown, Miss Q. Then I'm still giddy, but the daily double price, I should have doubled down with about 100 to win on Back on Track to boot at 5-2. That was insanity, just absolute insanity. Pardon the dead air here, guys. I want to go back and check this. We're going to be serious today and try to knock some money down. Yeah, Emily's Joy's maiden win was at Indy with the Newmakey run and just a third trip to the post there. And it wasn't a 5 furlong distance. And she was not too far back from the lead. And I see now we're at Belterra in an A other than. That was not even a 2 life or 3 life where she was second at first call, 22-1. So hush my mouth when it comes to her inability to defend the rail. She could be right with it here from the get-go, or at least get some aggressive position. Miss Q, Jay Bernardini rarely goes down as trainer when Kevin Joy's the owner. Usually they monkey around and play the shell game where they change the ownership. And a lot of times Jay Bird goes down as part owner and Burnsworth as part owner, and horses of Kevin Joy conditioned at Charlestown. They work together. They work friendly. This crew, and there's nothing unscrupulous about it. Kevin Joy is kind of on my bad list right now because he ran something last week that looked pretty good and was virtually eased in that A other than. It might have been Wednesday in an A other than towards the latter part of the card. So I got a bad taste in my mouth from Kevin Joy lately. And I looked it up, and not that it's relevant because there's a limited sample size, but on Formulator with Kevin Joy as owner and Jay Bird down as trainer, no matter who's playing what role really for real behind the scenes, they're 0 for 3 with a couple of virtual pull-ups. So there's that to consider there. And last time when Miss Q wins it, yeah, there was a horse that controlled the lead there. So it's not like it was a big fight to set it up for Miss Q as Miss Fortunate had just won and won well all the way on the lead at 4.5, and she controlled the lead there. So that was a loose leader that Miss Q ran down there. So that is not unimpressive from her, Miss Q. Her only miscue, if you'll pardon a really badass pun, was when she tried to go 7H, which is a whole different world. Carousing is turf. Number 3. Is Carousing still going to run here? She's turf. Carousing. But she does have a lively turn of foot and might get the lead here with Barrios up and make life more interesting for the horses down to her inside. That is for sure. Leave Drama behind has got a rapid turn of foot, but she's not nearly as good on dirt as she is on turf. She quits even on grass. So I don't like her to hold sway here at all, not even a little bit, with a 2 for 24 record. Flying to Neptune. I watched her beat a bad field at Charlestown back in January. I was doing the night thing and betting Mahoning in the afternoons and Charlestown a little bit at night. And I don't think this is a good spot necessarily for a form reversal from her either, Miss Neptune, or Flying to Neptune, because there is some speed in there. I am surprised that Team Blankenship, and I got to believe the owners calling this shot, because Little Donnie, I think, is way sharper than this, to take this horse back for 75 after being lost for 4, because when Sil Jim wins on June the 7th, that was a great setup for somebody to close. There were all kinds of weak speeds, and that race just fell apart for a final 440 of like 28 and some change. So that win wasn't even for real with Sil Jim. And you've got horses that are going to be a lot closer to the pace than Sil Jim in here that can finish a little bit to boot, like Emily's joined Miss Q. And then on the outside, you've got little value added. Shane Myers is having a really good season. Shane Myers is 2 moves, his 2 tricks, and he's good at both of them. And it's not a knock. He will win races off the bench because he runs dead fit horses and likes to prey on unsuspecting 2-turn turf fields with his comebackers. And he will also drop them really aggressively in a head-scratching manner. I've seen him buy them at Aqueduct and bring them in here and run them for $4,000 and have them lap the field and stuff like that. I'm not sure little value added necessarily fits either of those profiles. Adds Lasix for the first time, which is not a frequent move for Shane Myers. Gets clear sailing out there and might need the speed just to come back to her a little bit. She doesn't always fire little value added for whatever reason, although she gets gunned last time, I guess because she had the 1 post and the jock felt compelled to try that. And it was a deep field. It was an allowance race. It was a bigger purse than this. It was a slightly better track than this. And it was a better field. It was a pretty good field. I know those horses. And Kissin' Cash, I think, maybe won at Oaklawn Park for Kim Poole a couple of starts back. And Hoof and Boots had been a recent Maryland claim for like $25,000 by the Sharpie Charlie Williams. So a little value added. Didn't necessarily get a chance to show her best stuff there and may have bled there. Does add Lasix for this. And they're going to use that race to bring her down into a claimer here. So she's not without a chance either. Little value added. I think it could come down to just how good Emily's Story can run when switched back over to dirt, because I think she's clearly better on alternative footing. And what kind of trips that her and Miss Q are going to get, and whether or not the queasy feeling in my gut about Miss Q dropping from a straight up allowance win down to 15,000 and taking the trouble to come to Mountaineer after like about a 5 or 5.5 week absence, whether that's a little bit ominous or not. So I would not dispense with little value added. It was in tough last time. The jock had his hand forced by an unfortunate post position. She might be a little bit better from a little bit behind, and Lasix is added here. So she might even be a little bit too high in the win pool there, guys. So I am going to ponder this race, and I'm not promising to bet it or not to bet it. So whatever you guys have for inspiration out there, I hope it works out for you. Thanks for that note, Lyrics. That is what I call Norman Williams. I did not realize the splits were that torrid. So they went to war through the early stages there. And I would upgrade the effort from both those horses when I look at the fractions there, because they're the goods. And that is not even necessarily Silent Rules only running style or even preferred running style. So I'm not sure she loses a whole lot of luster there in defeat. Incredible fractions there. My friend, ye of leave drama behind inclinations, don't. Please don't. Please, my friend, don't. I love the comments, and they're apropos to that race. Hojin Lee says even money when the gate open, 2-5 at the wire. CAW, baby. Yeah, they're out in force, and they are just annihilating the odds on the apparent class. The Charlestown horse in the first, undefeated Silent Rule in the second, and then in the third race there, they come in on the stakes dropper. Ran in a 94K stakes last time at Indy, Emily's Joy. So 2-5 on Emily's Joy. Also, my man, Lyrics. Good job nailing that super, dude. I'm going to put your comment up here. Is my man making sport of me here with these Batman punch out comic book captions? Boom, boom. Super effect is mine. We went over all this last week, Lyrics. If you're going to do this in the dungeon, please be more creative. Do a kerplunk or a splat with a Z or something like that, you know? Can you do something besides a boom boom, my man? Please? Please? Good job on the superfecta. He's good at those. He's good at those verticals. Verticals aren't really my thing necessarily. This race is the mixed doubles companion piece to the back on track race. This is the same screwed up condition. Non-winners twice in 2026. They didn't intend to do this, believe me, or non-winners since last May. Oh, really? Okay. Or $35,000 claiming. Man, a lot of it, you see more scratches out of this 6 furlong affair because check out the speeds in here. I know that we've had 2 speed scratches, 2 really quick speeds came out of here. That Marshall Gotzi thing, Midnight Show, or something like that, and something up from Charlestown also there. To boot, were pace defections. Midnight Show and Vex decided discretion is the better part of valor because check out these speeds. Jamming Cameron, the legendary Jamming Cameron, 5.56 champ. A Trigger Point, who gets on about his business too early, and then Beach Colt on the outside. I thought you'd get more scratches in here, really, because this race came up so tough. An interesting comparison would be to jot the fractions down on this race, guys, and let's compare them to the sci-fi splits that were laid down in that virtual match race, which was the filly and mare edition at this same spot. The allowance optional. I'm really intrigued to do that. And now that I've seen what CAW's up to in their nefarious ways this afternoon, I don't know if Beach Colt's going to be any good to me. I really don't. I had gone in planning to bet on Beach Colt. But I think you're going to be all over Beach Colt here and just going to kill the price. Absolutely kill the price here on Beach Colt. And this is our first look at Amador Sanchez that I mentioned. The Super Ocho thing where he snuck up to the window. Urban Legend has it and bet a couple of K on Super Ocho with a bland 1 1/8 Chilean turf form. In a pretty competitive, if I remember, 5.5 furlong 4 life allowance at Mountaineer. But he knew what he had, man. And that same horse wins by 10 and we go on to set the lead. And the Breeders' Cup Sprint, yeah, you can't make this stuff up. So this guy's lethal when he runs at Mountaineer. And had another horse that he brought in here, I think a couple of years back, that also made some noise and did some damage. So he means business when he comes here. He's got a horse in the big race, so I think it's not without some kind of chance. But anyways, in this one with Beach Colt, Beach Colt looks like the class to me. Beach Colt's in the Smile Sprint on July the 4th, and Viking would emerge from that. And Viking's the horse that went out there and set dizzying fractions, even compared to other 6 furlong races on the same card. And Viking came back to maul 70K handicap at his next one. And he's just super fast as Viking. And talk about threading the needle. Beach Colt has got to chase Viking. And the horse that went past Beach Colt for second is a $500,000 earner, a versatile, all footing kind of runner who's a high quality rallier. So, man, that was just a daunting assignment there. Almost 30-1 for Beach Colt, who ran lights out. So Beach Colt then slips on up to Delaware, looking no doubt for class relief and a 2 other than allowance optional. He's not entered to be claimed there. And he is not in for the tag here either, by the way. And Beach Colt runs into Shane's Wonder. And if you got a second, you've got access, pull up the form on Shane's Wonder. Shane's Wonder just obliterated 3 straight fields at Parks. I think Pennsylvania breds. And then ran second in some kind of a stakes. and then just lays into an unsuspecting Beach Colt. There is a Beach Colt tried mightily to go with the raw speed because Shane's Wonder does have wondrous speed, not just a wondrous record. So Beach Colt again is in with an invincibly fast rival through the early stages. And there ain't no Shane's Wonders or Vikings in this race, guys. And with a couple of the speeds accommodatingly defected from this, it makes Beach Colt's assignment, I think, all that much easier. Not that it's based on balls, because Jamin Cameron's got the 5.8 speed and that legendary win record. Although Jamin Cameron can be reasoned with in the early stages. I think he's only had the outright lead in like one of his last 5 races or something like that. Of course, 6 panels enhances his acceleration. And 5.56 champ, who's a win machine. I always call him the modern Anekoic, if you guys have followed the Mahoning sport for any period of time. 5.56 champ was originally a J-Rad horse. Jeff Radosevich, brought up from Florida, I think, was 5.56 champ. And all he does is win. But he's kind of a strong speed, who's always hooked out there and sometimes gets topped. And I don't think he's likely to go out there, nor is Jamin Cameron, and set some kind of unreasonable pace that Beach Colt just can't lap on to, top, or deal with, in my opinion. But if you look at the speed setup here, is favoring somebody from off the pace. You got a couple of dandy candidates. You got Catch the Humor on the inside there, and Catch the Humor wins just second out to the post with an 84 Byron, some kind of a stakes. And this horse has won all kinds of allowance races and stepped outside the program to win an allowance in his first start off the bench there in May, and then comes back at 11-1 on a stakes and doesn't bounce, doesn't regress. Instead comes back to run well. And that Confucius Say race comes up tough most years, even though those are West Virginia breds. So Catch the Humor is a quality closer with a good win record, 6 for 13, and gets tempo here to run at, to say the least. Does Catch the Humor, who's at a good place in his campaign, third start off the bench, unless you want to knock him for the fact that he's been away almost a couple of months. And that may well be because they can't find a spot for him at Charlestown, and that's why he's here. The outfit's already in the win column today, which doesn't hurt Catch the Humor's chances either. And Catch the Humor, I would know him late here. Another behind the pace possibility, because this race is replete with fast speeds, is Highly Flammable. Highly Flammable gets claimed like 3 times for increasingly higher amounts there. There's Highly Flammable. And Highly Flammable was second in a starter on May the 15th. And the horse that beat him would come back to be a tough beat second in a 40 claimer. So there was a quality foe there against Highly Flammable. Now, Flammable's not a winner on dirt, so there's that to consider. And also, he is away a couple of months in between his last couple of races. They're Highly Flammable. I'll spot him. That one is outclassed in the big purse allowance at Ellis Park there for Highly Flammable. Interesting thing about his past performances, he was a shorter sprint specialist without any kind of a daunting kick at 5 and 5.5. But believe it or not, he developed a more potent rally in the longer sprints at 6 and 6.5 even, and stuff like that. He has been a synthetic specialist, Highly Flammable. And again, his last race is not good, but I will probably spot him that since he was outclassed, at least ostensibly, and he is winless on conventional dirt. So if it comes down to somebody from off the pace, I would maybe prefer Catch the Humor to Highly Flammable as we scoot on over and check out the odds here, guys. And boy, time flies. There's already 0 to post, and Beach Colt is 2-1. I think it's a tease, though, because I think the CAW is going to land with both feet on Beach Colt. But if I don't, and they don't, then I'm going to regret it. So I'm going to watch the board very closely and decide whether to bet. 5.56 champ, I think, is overbet at 7-2. Just on his rep and win record. He's another Jaybird off the bench sort. And Catch the Humor, I think his running style is a large part of the appeal there. Otherwise, he would probably be a little bit higher than 7-2. Again, somewhat surprised that some more of these speeds didn't scratch out and defect in the presence of so much other early firepower guys. Oh, and how we're going to drag this start here. Maybe time for me to slip in some West Virginia Derby lore, huh? Floyd Green, an ancient jockey who reportedly rode until he was about 70 years old, I think won the West Virginia Derby 5 times back during its first or second incarnation for a Canadian trainer named Patsy Santo, who my father revered, absolutely revered. That was not the dawn of the West Virginia Derby, though, because Bill Mooney, the late great Bill Mooney, two-time Eclipse winning turf scribe. Man, there was nobody to research like Bill Mooney. He and Chris Lincoln taught me a ton about how to come up with factoids and information. And Bill Mooney apprised me of the fact he used to come in and do the publicity for the West Virginia Derby. Now it's Tom Lamara, so it's still in really good hands for sure. And the great tradition of Bill Mooney. And Bill informed me that the first Derby was actually run at a long defunct track called Tri-State Downs, which was, I think, somewhere in Steubenville or Fort Steuben Oval or something like that, some little obscure oval that no longer exists. And that was the first West Virginia Derby. There was an infamous occasion when Jim Edwards, who owned the track and also owned Audley Farm, when his horse ran second in the West Virginia Derby. And this is modern era, but a long, long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away, back when the joint was Waterford Park. And the stewards promoted Jim Edwards' horse via disqualification. So no shades there of Bing Crosby, who in one of the first stakes races ever contested at Del Mar, which he was instrumental in the inauguration of, Bing Crosby, ran down to the weight shack, grabbed the phone and called the steward and said, "Do not put my horse up," even though his horse had run second. And it had clearly been filed. No such nobility from Jim Edwards, who sat there and saw his horse and he owned the track promoted via disqualification in a West Virginia Derby. I think that runner's name was Two Joys a few years back, I think. Long time ago, man. I think we're talking about maybe the early 1970s. I'm going to stand back and come back with more West Virginia Derby lore. And I know a lot of it, baby, on and off throughout the day. I see a question from Kenny Neely. What is fair value on number 10? Kenny, I like the horse a lot, despite somewhat, at least potentially, unfavorable pace scenario. But I'm really afraid the CAW is going to take a late hand here and make a big move on Beach Colt. So that's my concern, Kenny. This 12-1 on Beach Colt morning line, by the way, guys, is one of the most inept morning line price points ever conceived. Because this race was not scheduled for turf originally, so the lines maker does not have that as an excuse, kids. I think you guys realize that on the big day, normally run-of-the-mill allowances like this get souped up and enhanced by the shipping outfits that come here for the big races, the Governors and the Derby. So you would not normally see the likes of a Beach Colt at a race like this in Mountaineer, but Beach Colt the tag along for his stablemate who was slated to contest and probably set the pace in the West Virginia Derby a little bit later on. So at least in theory, some of these undercard horses that came here with more vaunted stablemates, they're going to contest the big purses this afternoon, might have a class edge in an undercard event like this. 2-1 right now on Beach Colt. Still leery, still afraid the price is going to drop precipitously. I do think Trigger Point is a bit overmatched here, guys, with his starter allowance form. And if not quite Powder Puffs, has been beating up on far softer competition than this. Plus, he has not been postward since May the 24th there. Guys, I put a banner up that kind of summarized it. Three inevitabilities, in my opinion, just occurred. And this was my pre-race take. Stiff pace, inevitable. Beach Colt wins anyway. This horse hasn't seen speed relief since he shipped up from Chile. He's in this perpetual fight with unbelievably fast and classy speed horses. And number three, he was pretty obvious. So CAW kills the price, just obliterates it. 3-5 on Beach Colt. A couple of takeaways. Vasquez is really hot right now. Sent out Gone Boy to outrun Gone Boy's front running route. Past performances there. He was in last year's West Virginia Derby, was he not? Gone Boy, yeah. Gone Boy likes this track. He doesn't like the sprint though. But I would attribute most of that to the trainer factor because Vasquez, I think, won 4 races last week and maybe 3 the week before. So his stock is just on fire right now. And also, Falcon Blue, sharp guy, Jamin Davidovich, laying in the weeds there and tried to have something for them with an established open allowance horse from Charlestown that he got on the down low there when Falcon Blue would hit the skids. And God knows what kind of noise he's going to make with Falcon Blue moving forward there because he attempted to wire it right under Beach Colt's nose, but the Beach Colt just a little too fast and a little bit too brave. Again, Beach Colt walks into this speed-laden scenario, and the horse has got to be thinking, what else is new? I've been in with speed you wouldn't believe and been forced to go mano a mano. So that's his trip, Beach Colt, and Beach Colt wins it there, albeit at 3-5. I did bet, even though I knew what was going to happen to the price, it was going to go south in a big, big hurry, and it did on Beach Colt. Check out the fractions. 3/5 of a second slower to the half than the same filly and mare race, same condition, same bad time, same bad channel. So how does that make tonight's second race look? Not just for the winning back on track, because Beach Colt is crazy fast. To go 3/5 faster than half than Beach Colt, back on track, winner of that virtual match race in the night second. And maybe not so quick to downgrade Silent Rule there for that performance when you look at the fractions on the same race for boys. In the end, that was so loaded with speed, the 4th race there. And again, the back on track match race victory where she visited Silent Rule's Waterloo on that one's 10 for 10 record, went 3/5 faster to the half. Interesting stuff so far from the mountain. A little bit of a come down now, maiden special. Flip it over to mile 70 on the main track there. And some of these are non-contenders. Really, you can boil it down pretty quickly, guys. Let me see how many minutes we have to post here. Yeah, we've got an eternity. We've got 6 minutes to post. And they're dragging the starts, but not quite to the extent I might have expected. They're moving the festivities along rather nicely. I can recall an occasion when they didn't move the festivities along when the bigger one was held up for like 40 minutes for jocks that were late arriving from the Pittsburgh airport. And that was shortly after the Derby had been reinstituted. I think in 1998. Yeah, might have been the first one back. And I was doing the ESPN color commentary. I'm there with Chris Lincoln, who's kind of the play-by-play guy. So we get the word in our earpieces. There's going to be like a 35-minute delay, a 40-minute delay. So I had to fill the time. And I just started to yak and wax nostalgic and talk about the place and how to primer and how to handicap Mountaineer and just a general history primer on the mountain. And then finally about the surrounding area on which I am somewhat versed. If you're intrigued by where the mountain sits, then I recommend a book called That Dark and Bloody Land or The Dark and Bloody River or something like that. Yeah, because Mountaineer sits right next to the Ohio River. And it is an historic place. The Native American and settler battles that shaped the future of this very country, a lot of them transpired right where Mountaineer sits. And it was also an apple orchard, just to wax historic here for a little bit. It was an apple orchard before it became a racetrack. And Gloria Swanson, the queen diva of silent movies, the no talkies, actually made a movie there called Apple Blossom Time. I think it might have been a talkie right after the advent of sound. And it's almost impossible to find and catch So one night I'm just half asleep and I'm looking at the next day's form. This is after I started doing the Mountaineer simulcast show. And I hear on some obscure cable channel, some overvoice says, at 1:00, we're going to follow this feature with the Overland Stage with McDonald Carey. And then at 3:00, you'll want to stick with us for Gloria Swanson and Apple Blossom Time. I'm thinking, yeah, baby, yeah. I'm going to see some familiar landmarks. I'm going to see what Mountaineer looked like back in the prehistoric age. So I conked out. I fell asleep, and now I will never get to watch Apple Blossom Time. There's still a remnant of when it was an apple orchard. There's a decrepit building down next to the river that they call the Apple Barn because that was its function. I guess back during the colonial era when the place was an apple orchard. So we had to kill 40 minutes. I think I told this story a couple of nights ago, Chris Lincoln and I. And I guess I did it somewhat skillfully and kept it entertaining because like 2 days later, I got named like employee of the 6-month period or the quarter or the whole freaking year or something. Because I actually think the powers that be were that appreciative that I covered them when they undertook the highly unorthodox move to hold up a signature horse race, a derby, in fact, for 40 minutes for the jocks to get her from the Pittsburgh airport. Chris Lincoln was good to work with, man. He was like a safety net. You almost felt like you couldn't go wrong when you're working with Chris Lincoln. But about the fourth time, my man asked me, well, Mark, what's it like for you and Joe and the boys in the racing office to have a high-quality race right here in West Virginia? So I pound out some kind of a 15-minute answer. And then he comes right back with the same question, the same effing question, you know, because he's in the same boat as me. We got to fill 40 freaking minutes. Not that much time to fill here. We've got to fill the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 to the post. And the bookends seem to have it here. I know that the 5 horse is also active in the win pool, Sperry Chalet at 3-1. Sperry Chalet 0 for 16 is not necessarily a proven loser by Mountain Maiden standards, but I think Sperry Chalet stepped up a little bit on the grass. And I'm going to go by her dirt form. And she folded a couple of times in cheap maiden claimers at Charlestown, and then locally loses by 5. And boy, you can't ask for much more than a 24-4 and a 50. So that was her ticket to ride, and Sperry Chalet still folded to another speed in 5th gear. So I'm going to toss her unceremoniously out on her big horse's ass here as far as a win candidate. And I'm going to focus in on the bookends here. Completely Elegant on the inside and red drapes on the outside. We don't have drapes in a new house we had built 3 years ago. That's old school stuff, man. That's Civil War crap, right? Scarlett O'Hara, who took the curtains and made herself a dress so she could look good for Red Butler. Yeah, we have blinds, nice blinds. We have blinds. That's the modern look, right? Anyway, completely Elegant on the inside. Only 1 start on dirt, but that was first time to the post. And a lot of horses are better than their first time to the post. It's been away since January, but this conditioner has one of the marquee horses in, and that is later on in the Governors is race number 7. She has got Bracket Buster in there. Bracket Buster was second to Sovereignty in the Grade 1 Travers last year and has a world of speed. And let me tell you what, I'm not going to be embracing Bracket Buster in the Governors because there is other early foot. But beyond that, I've never seen a stakes race won at Mountaineer, especially at the 2-turn type by a horse away this period of time. You got to be more recent than that. But I looked her up pertaining to Bracket Buster. And this conditioner can win races with horses away. I found one instance where a horse had been off like 400 days and wins for her. So she's had the training saddle out. I am sure with Completely Elegant, who's been away since January. Completely Elegant's race there at Turfway Park for $100,000 purse. Completely Elegant speed fought. So that's a built-in excuse to back out late and was outdueled by the winner. And the winner has come back to win a stakes or 2 and set the pace in a couple of other stakes. So that was high-quality speed and quick speed that Completely Elegant threw down with for the lead at Turfway Park back in January. And you do have the dirt question and also the absence to think about here with Completely Elegant, who's going to be the favorite, is going to be lower, I would say, because the CAW, they're looking for the big time horses coming from the bigger tracks. It's almost one dimensional thinking from what we've seen them piling on so far. But they did make the one misstep, the one fatal misstep. And they definitely fattened my personal betting account considerably by making Silent Rule such a short price to beat back on track. So it's not like they're infallible. They made one major miscue so far today. So stay tuned for more, possibly. More missteps from CAW. Number 5, Sperry Chalet is 4-1. Cantora, number 6, Cantora. I was 2-1 on turf there because the turf race with a near 60 buyer wasn't too bad at Fairgrounds, and a maiden special back in February of 2025. And this horse was also a good number in debut on synthetics. So when Cantora pops up at Charlestown there, goes 4.5, then comes back at 7/8, takes a little play, just not Charlestown worthy, and showed some potential early in her career there. So either she hates dirt or she's not going to live up to that potential that she has went backwards since. A fairly promising first couple of starts there, Cantora. I got to believe she's not the same horse because should have done a lot better on grass there, right? In a claimer that came up soft. Given those first 2 promising efforts on synthetics, which is turf adjacent, and turf, man, she should have been a full load for that field, but she wasn't. So I'm not going to jump up too quick to like her here when she does have to do the dirt thing. Red Drapes on the outside. I said a couple of times on this show, anytime you see Juan Arreglada connected, past, present, or future with a Jaybird horse, pay close attention because they almost always run. And Red Drapes had been second at Presque Isle in front-running fashion for a decent speed figure, a mile 70 there. And then Red Drapes on August the 2nd here runs 6 furlongs and loses to a horse named Happy Friday, who was a short-priced favorite and who enjoyed a wide trip on what was a wide biased surface there. Red Drapes was also kind of wide. Red Drapes acquitted herself pretty well against a favored winner who might have some upside, I think, and can definitely do the route thing. So she is deserving of considerable support here, and she's getting it, man, at 7-5 there. And the post is not going to be a hindrance because she got 3 scratches between her and the real marker, Completely Elegant. I'm looking at the work tab on Completely Elegant. She's been getting tuned up at Keeneland as Completely Elegant. And you see this pattern play out at Mountaineer and maiden special weight races sometimes when they come from the bigs, especially Kentucky, even with woeful forms, but pretty good pedigree. They choose to come to Mountaineer and break maiden without risking the horse instead of moving in for a claiming price at a bigger track. So shipping fillies from the bigs, most notably Kentucky, down in the bluegrass, that go favored in Mountaineer maiden special races with any kind of pedigree behind them can be very tough to beat and hit for a high percentage, folks. So just even a little beyond the form analysis here, that's just something to stick in your thinking cap before you bet on this race. So CAW tipped their hand a little bit early here, guys, 3-5, and I suspected this was coming on the quote-unquote class horse, Completely Elegant. And this is another tag along with a contestant in a big race later on, so it fits the same profile as Beach Colt in that regard, and CAW is going to pick up on that. And also the fact that Completely Elegant dueled last time with a future stakes horse that has a lot of speed. The CAW teams tipped their mid a little bit early there and sent it was 3-5. I think well before the break, right? Completely elegant and same pattern, far lesser horse, but same pattern as Beach Colt. Horse that tags along with a more vaunted stablemate that's going to run one of the big ones a little bit later on. So these outfits have an edge to outclass local horses in undercard races on Derby Day, and that's what happens with Completely Elegant. And the CAW picked up on it because it was easy. The Completely Elegant ran from a barn that does tend to get them fit off the long layups, astonishingly so in some cases. And also the Completely Elegant, and this was what they were betting on here. Completely Elegant dueled last time with the eventual winner, who would go on to win a stakes or two and set the pace at a couple of other stakes. So that's high quality speed. The Completely Elegant threw down with last time on the engine. So that's what all that money was about at 3-5 on Completely Elegant. I would caution you though, even though this potentially bodes better for Bracket Buster, he of the distant second to Future Legend Sovereignty. And Sovereignty was the big winner yesterday at the big race. And that was Sovereignty's finest hour last year at Saratoga. His breakout race to win by 10 in the, was it the Haskell last year? No, it was the Travers. It had to be the Travers if it was Saratoga, right? And let's check Bracket Buster out here just for 1 second. And that was the Travers. Yeah, the grade 1 Travers. But it's one thing to win a maiden race with a horse away many months going around the ground. It's quite another to win a Mountaineer Stakes race. That is just not the profile that wins at Mountaineer in stakes races. So I would proceed cautiously and would not necessarily unload on Bracket Buster simply because the barn won with another returnee at a rotting ground earlier on the card there. And I mentioned the overlaying pattern there, which was a big factor, I think. And specific to fillies with value in the breeding shed that have any kind of pedigree, a lot of times they will bring them from Kentucky and run in Mountaineer Maiden special weight races to break maiden, because to win at the bigs, they would have to come in for a claiming price and maybe lose the horse. And you've seen this play out just time after time over the years at Mountaineer. So as I mentioned, favored fillies with any kind of pedigree at all, the chip from the bigs, most notably Kentucky, are almost invincible in Mountaineer Maiden special weight races for obvious reasons, right? We're coming to a marathon race now, and this would have been a lot better if it stayed on turf. Most marathons are written under starter allowance conditions, and this is part of a series, I guess, that may be slated to stretch out even longer than this, huh? We're talking about 1.75 miles here, which means now that it's dirt, they will start out of the 6 furlong chute on the backstretch. And I'll give you guys a little local insight to 1.75 mile races on dirt. Not that they're common, they're very uncommon. But for some reason, the jockeys and horses, when they look down that long backstretch and break out of the 6 furlong chute, even though they've got 14 full furlongs in front of them, tend to get duped and gin it up a little quicker than they normally would at 1.75 mile distance. Watch the jocks down the backstretch here. And they won't be quite as under wraps or quite as fighting their mounts and standing straight up in the tack as they would if they didn't have that long straightaway in front of them. As far as breaking this race down goes, nobody in here has ever run a marathon before. And I'm not going to punt and say, okay, small field to 9, at least 1 1/8 miles. So that means he's going to be a better marathon horse than these flat mile creatures. Nah, it doesn't work like that. Doesn't work like that. This is Undiscovered Country, one of my favorite Star Trek movies. The one in which Bones McCoy said to Jim when he's making out with the alien shapeshifter in the lower bunk, "What is it with you?" Just great stuff. A great line from my favorite, maybe Star Trek character, Bones McCoy. But anyways, small field. The barn's 5 for 10 on the year, and Shane Myers runs fit horses. You got to give him that. Small field, that was pretty obviously better on turf than dirt. And even though we're winning 1.1 miles, that ain't 1.75 miles, folks. It ain't 1.75 miles. Captain Creed, and this strikes me as really strange, was reclaimed last time at $11,000 loss. They blow this horse for 4 and take the horse back for 15. Captain Creed, unless the original claim was a protection claim, and there was always that possibility at Mountaineer. And this is the kind of stuff I never could have said on the Mountaineer feed. But if it wasn't a protection claim, then it's really weird to claim a Captain Creed back for $15K, except it's not the trainer's money, it's an owner's money. They get kind of fond of their horses, and obviously the horse was claimed with this series in mind because Captain Creed won twice last year at 11 furlongs. I know it was turf, but 11 furlongs, baby. We're talking about 1 3/8 miles a couple of times. So Captain Creed has the most established stamina in here. And I guess it's a positive note that Captain Creed pretty obviously was taken back into the fold last time with this series and maybe even specifically this race in mind for Captain Creed, who is, I think, better on turf. If you look at his dirt wears, struggles to win a 4,000 in 6 months there on May the 11th. But we're into a whole nother dimension here at 1.75 miles, guys. Just a whole different situation. And they're still in the paddock there at 1 minute to post. We had a long time to go here, though. And the Shane Myers horse is 2-1 up there, and Captain Creed is 6-1. And then you've got Summer Blessed. Summer Blessed, I think, has more innate speed than anybody in here. And Summer Blessed is a horse that I think has won at 1 1/8, is he not? But again, doesn't matter because this is a marathon. He's never even tried a marathon. Summer Blessed. Summer Blessed, if this were a conventional distance on a dirt race, would probably be favored off some of his wares. He's got a tough beat second to a good Charlestown dirt horse in an off-turf race, 2-back, and then last time beats Quite the Now horse to the wire at least, although he fouled him in another off-turf race that has proven somewhat productive there. Summer Blessed. So he's good in off-turf races. He's versatile, and he's got more natural speed than anybody else in here does Summer Blessed, unless Small Field, who sometimes launches a stiff internal move at conventional route distances, gets on the muscle here. And you never know which horses are going to rate kindly and which won't when they're asked to slow down to a virtual 2-minute clip, to a virtual crawl, guys. So I wouldn't necessarily look at this flat mile form from Summer Blessed, identify him as your likeliest pace setter and say, good, man, that's what I want to bet on. Because again, man, you're going 14 furlongs, uncharted territory for virtually everybody in here. Yeah, guys, I put up David Shable's appropriate comment. I don't want to go out of my way and knock the Mountaineer Morning Lines Maker. I really don't. I don't want to knock anybody. But as a former lines maker myself, and I was the official there that did the odds for 30-some years, 40,000 races, and I wasn't too bad at it either. It's in my wheelhouse, and I would be remiss to not observe in this kind of a broadcast that there's 2 winners in a row that went off at 3-5. They were both double odds on the program price point, 12-1 on Beach Colt, which was insane, and then 20-1 on that winner. You can give them a little grace, I guess, because the race came off turf. And usually I don't critique price points, program price points when the race comes off the grass because the morning line's conceived for turf. But still, just ridiculous to have Completely Elegant at 20-1 and Beach Colt at 12-1. No, not good. Not good at all, guys. Gerald Ray Dapple Gray, number 6, Sergio Don Juan, win some races at Mountaineer, and this horse is in good form. But again, not a hint of marathon history. And he's been the beaten favorite at really short odds the last 2 times his races came off turf. Gerald Dapple Gray. And you never know which of these horses can get the marathon and which of these horses are going to be looking for a gas station at about the half-mile pole. Second time around. I don't even mean the first time around. They're big spin. A big spin would take crazy play if this were a conventional route race, because big spin, obviously the best horse, arguably the best horse in here on conventional dirt, has been bludgeoned twice by Superstar Force of Justice, who's way above this field and wins a starter with a good late kick. But just because a horse is a sustained type, a stone cold closer at 1 mile, doesn't mean he can do the 1 3/4, guys. It's a different tempo. It's a different kind of ride. It's in some instances a different kind of action and stride. And I didn't get down low and dig dirty into these pedigrees or anything like that. But there's got a long history of route races, marathon races, I should say. Peter Barry, arguably, Mountaineer's illustrious world-class race caller, obviously, arguably his finest hour came at a marathon call with a horse named Theodore. Look it up. It's on YouTube. You can find it. all over the place because his call was just priceless. When Fyodor keeps opening up, and wins by something like 50 lengths, which might be a North American record for margin of victory, Pete really supplied some color. So check out the Fyodor call. Pete's finest call, his signature call, really. The Fyodor Marathon. Although big margin wins in marathon races don't always impress me so much because you see so many situations where one horse is feeling it and the main foes are having off days, and it gets ugly because one horse feels like running and keeps running and the others don't. So you see these humongous margins of victory that aren't really indicative of race in, race out superiority. So we're getting loosened up here. And don't forget, they're going to break out of the 6 furlong chute and come all the way around to the wire and then go around again. And we have seen jockeys blow the wire and ride all out to the finish the first time to the wire in marathon races and Mountaineer. Jason Lumpkins is infamous for doing it once on one of the chalks. And when I called him on it in the recap, believe it or not, blamed me at the jocks room the next day and said nobody would have noticed it if Mark Patterson and his big mouth weren't pointing it out to everybody. Oh, no, Jason, nobody would have noticed that you were 40 in front, first time to the wire in a marathon race, sticking and driving, down booting and scooting. Hell no, nobody would have noticed. My good man. My friends, I would not touch this race with your money. We do class it up for the 7th, which is the 200,000 West Virginia Governors, which was a grade 3 and then lost its graded status, but is still a listed stake, so carries some gravitas. Those are the Governors. So many years, it's a better race than the West Virginia Derby. I think this year is probably another case in point. Emphasis on early speed in the night's 7th race for sure. I should say this late afternoon 7th race. And we're going to have fun talking about that one after we get this one out of the way. And this is a race which I am not going to lift a finger to make a bet on. I have no clue what's going to happen here, guys. And I'm going to Pasadena. Just 7 minutes until the supporting feature and probably the best quality race on the card, the $200,000 Governors. I binged The Wire twice in its entirety during those two replays. Gerald Ray Dappled Gray got a clever ride there from Batista. He avoided making a premature move, which I thought a couple of them did. They were going too hard. First time past the wire, in my opinion. Horses were moving too quickly to challenge, but he's going to win no matter what, I think, because as it turns out, he was a stayer. And I don't think this could have been predicted from his past performances, but he rated very kindly the horse. And again, Batista avoided making a premature move there on Gerald Ray Dapple Gray. I stayed out of it. I hope you hit the 6-horse there. And now we come to the Governors, which was a grade 3 a couple of years ago. They knocked it down to a listed mile and a 16th we're talking about here. And a well-accomplished field with something like $4 million in cumulative earnings and Bracket Buster. And this outfit won a race earlier, a distance race coming off the bench, is the favorite, I think, Bracket Buster. This barn can win route races, too, with horses that are returning. But I've never seen a race of this quality in Mountaineer, or any stakes for that matter, won by a horse that had been away as long as Bracket Buster has, since last fall, since October, in fact. Bracket Buster, since around Halloween, man. And this is just not the profile that wins Mountaineer Stakes. I think the name recognition factor is knocking the odds down on Bracket Buster, who was second to Sovereignty. And Sovereignty is fresh in people's minds after that tour de force yesterday, no question about that. And Bracket Buster outdueled Magnitude. This will not be lost on the bettors either. Magnitude, he of near 10 million in earnings, who won the Dubai World Cup, and the Stephen Foster tanked yesterday, but who cares? This is what Bracket Buster was capable of at his best for that triple buyer, which he earned the hard way at Saratoga. Going a mile and a quarter in the Travers. That's class, that's speed. That's the number to back it up. That's a lot of good things from Bracket Buster, who stubbed his toe only against older horses there in his last start of the season. But Bracket Buster's alert. He likes to vie for the lead or lean harder on whoever does get the lead. And there is some other speed in this race to confront Bracket Buster. It's my birthday, the 8-horse. I wasn't all that fast in his route engagements there, but off his sprint history and how alert he's been in his last couple of races, most recently 6 furlongs. And I bet Diodoro's got him all cranked up for this. He should be alert out there. Mogul, number 4, the mystery man, Amador Sanchez, sends out Mogul. And Mogul's got a front-running style and was like the hero of Chile. And Mogul, I think, has only lost like one time out of his last like 9 or 10 races, Mogul. And he's a stayer, too, mile and a quarter and stuff like that, winning by these big margins and clear-cut margins. And then it's a mere A other than, though, that he wires at Gulfstream Park there. And that's back in May for Mogul. But I wish I could see the running lines on his Chilean form. He might have a world of speed, Mogul. And I'm going to bet he's on scent here and helps go out there and contest the pace or force a legitimate pace. And I think the favorite's more than vulnerable here off this absence. Again, does not fit the winning profile for stakes races in Mountaineer. Bracket Buster. Neo Equos is interesting. Hard horse to read from the inside. Neo Equos went out and dueled in the cavalry charge that was the Sovereignty Kentucky Derby on Neoquos, and he's come back to win a couple of stakes since then. Was even rated in one of them, but that was on turf. So I wonder if they've fallen in love with a new running style for Neoquos, or they're going to revert and try to use his natural speed here from the one post. I like trainers that have a good history at Mountaineer. And Safi Joseph unleashed one of the best West Virginia Derby winners ever, at least based on what the horse went on to do, Skippy Longstockings, a couple of years back. I've never seen a throng like that around the winner's circle cheering loudly for Safi Joseph. So I'm going to bet he's got this horse all teed up for this race. Neoquos, who's coming out of a couple of graded affairs there and was in very tough on May 25th, tried to thread a needle by chasing an extremely fast leader there at Lone Star in that flat mile event. And that's a quality closer that capitalized on the stiff pace to come on and win. So Neoquos ran a ton there. And then in his next one, he's almost 15 to 1, so he's outclassed. Neoquos does seem like he hangs a little bit at the moment of truth. So I don't know if he gets ready behind the lead here, what kind of trip that's going to result in, or if maybe they're going to pull out all the stops and say, you know what, big guy, go out there and do your thing. First time on LASIK since May of 2025 for Neoquos here. This is not a graded stake, so we do see the LASIKs on this one. Play It Loud looks completely outclassed. Hall of Fame number 6 has more triple buyers than anybody in here. And some big names on his past performances, too. He's a good fourth. The Mystic Dan was third to Fierceness. My Lord. Hall of Fame. Hall of Fame does tend to hang a little bit. It seems like they're going to try for a better position in here with him, I'm sure, with Hall of Fame, because he was too far out of it in his last couple of races. Maybe wasn't quite ready and did get bounced around at the start. There was a little wide through the early stages on June 28th. So not a great trip. Was back in triple buyer country, although I'm a little skeptical of his ability to punch it across the goal line based on his last few running lines. And all of a sudden he's in what, a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 race slump is Hall of Fame and did. And this is kind of ominous. If you read the full chart narrative, flip back over to his left lead in the home stretch last time. Steve Asmussen's success at Mountaineer needs no introduction from me. Don't have to let you guys know that he's won the big one 5, I think maybe 6 times. Is Steve Asmussen, who graces us with a maiden in this afternoon's West Virginia Derby, does Asmussen. I think this could set up. I really do. And Warp 9 unveiled a new dimension last time to drop way back and come flying. Now, I know the race was closer friendly. I have no idea why DRF did not designate it such. I designated such because the lead was hotly contested for a lot of that race, and Warp 9 was well ridden to be way back, to be well in arrears. But the horses that he blew by there in deep stretch were not wasted speeds, spent front runners, but they were pretty good closers in their own rights. The runner-up had just been claimed from Brad Cox for $100,000 and came with a good kick there. So that was Warp 9's best buyer figure. And I like the newfound running style. I think it would work here maybe. I think it could be flattered here, Warp 9. My one question about Warp 9, I think is pretty obvious here. And my question is Warp 9 going to be over the top after a career buyer last time? And what was his 18th start over the last 2 years? And this horse hasn't had a respectable rest since 2024, I'm pretty sure. So it's been forever since this horse had any kind of a rest. Warp 9. But if he can duplicate that race and he's real about being a closer, then I would fear him a lot here. Warp 9 at 8-1. And they were coming towards the track for what is annually the best field put together in Mountaineer. I see where Rich Ruda is sitting in and making selections at Mountaineer this afternoon. Just noticed that. He was the well-respected and long-time TV analyst at Thistledown was a Rich Ruda. Yeah, this guy knows how to handicap. And there's a look at Neoquos. You got owner silks in these 2 races. But track caps that match the saddle cloths. And that can look ugly if they clash too much with the silks. I remember when Western Pride won it with the 9 silks, funky ass silks with a green and orange pattern. Funky ass cap that just did not match the silks Western Pride. And it sticks out like a sore thumb in the win photo, the win picture. Which my boss, Joe LeCat Narcavish, had hung up in his office for a long time. And I told him, take that freaking thing down, Joe, because it hurts the eyes to look at how the track cap clashes with those silks. Bracket Buster 7-5. I'm chomping at the bit to bet against this horse. And I would recommend Hall of Fame or Warp 9 in this race. Neoquos is interesting and kind of a swing vote here. I think Neoquos, who is worthy of some attention. I think your first race key is to watch him for the first 100 yards and try to figure what the strategy is going to be on Neoquos, who's got the natural speed if called upon, but whose most recent win, without taking any kickback, was from behind the pace on turf, Neoquos. And some horses at the Neoquos stage of career really come into their own. He's a 4-year-old with 16 starts worth of experience. And that can be go time for a lot of thoroughbred racehorses. And I see where Bracket Buster, at the same stage experience-wise of his career, but with one important caveat, he's been away from the races since October of 2025. And I will tip my cap to Team Bracket Buster and to the horse, certainly. But I think the big names on his past performances are driving the odds down below fair value here. And I'm not sure I'm in love with the race shape for Bracket Buster. So I will tip my hat to the horse and his connections if he wins. But my full intention is to bet against him, Bracket Buster. Good luck to you guys back after this running of the illustrious, but no longer grade 3, Governor's Stakes. This race kind of carries the memory of when we named all the stakes. We had an all stakes program, West Virginia Derby Day, for years in Mountaineer, for a long time. And we were forced to suck up to all the dignitaries, all the Southern West Virginia politicians that helped usher in the video slots, which accelerated our racing program. So all the races on our all stakes undercard for the Derby were named to suck ass, to suck up to various politicians that couldn't even find Mountaineer with GPS and never came, never made the scene. We had the Chairman's Cup, the Speaker's Cup, the Governor's Stakes. And I just wanted to gag every time I pronounced those long, unwieldy, pointless names when I would much rather have named these races for significant horses in Mountaineer/Waterford's history, for local landmarks, for other things that were pertinent to place the action peaks. But no, we had to kiss asses and name every one of these stakes some big mouthful, like 20-word names to these freaking stakes. And you had to keep pronouncing them over and over and over again. Every time you took a nomination, it was, are you nominating for the official Speaker's Cup Turf Stakes? Are you nominating for the Chairman's Cup? Bitter memory, the name of the stakes for me. But good memories of the stakes itself. I wonder if the crowd tracks that amount. It looks like a lively bunch, a lot of folks packed in there. Realize just what they just watched. That is unprecedented in the history of either of the two big Mountaineer stakes, certainly the West Virginia Derby. And the Governor is definitely for a horse to do that to the competition to begin with. It's got to be the biggest margin in the history of the Governors, which goes back a ways. But beyond that, to do it off an October absence, I've never seen anything like that at the place the action peaks. So all I can do is tip my cap to the horse, as I said before the race, and also to the trainer. And what a piece of horsemanship there to win two routes on the same card with horses both unstarted. In the instance of the maiden since January, and with Bracket Buster since last fall. Bracket Buster ran like a horse that speed fought, outdueled Magnitude, and then finished second to Sovereignty in Sovereignty's finest performance, arguably last year's Travers. So amazing stuff there from Bracket Buster, historic stuff in the context of Mountaineer. I am in awe of that effort, but I'm going to shoot against a horse like Bracket Buster, knowing what I know about the history of Mountaineer Stakes every single time. I didn't like the pace setup for him, and I've never seen a horse do that in a big Mountaineer Stakes without benefit of more recency. But again, I'm just in awe of that training performance and the thoroughbred performance there from Bracket Buster. That's going to get out in the annals for sure. And those are some pretty deep annals when it comes to Governor Stakes winners. I won't say it's the best field ever compiled that he had behind him. Had the impression nobody else really ran a lot, but boy, he did. Bracket Buster. So now we come to the big one, the West Virginia Derby, which is $400,000. This is an allowance stakes for 3-year-olds, which means the weights are prescribed in the header there. And I had a foolproof profile for Derby winners for a long, long time before the race got knocked down a peg or two. When the first got reduced, I think, to 600,000 and 500,000, and now it's 400,000. But at its apex as a grade 2, you had to, and I could prove this on paper. And I doped it out, and it was just infallible. A horse had to have won, believe it or not, a stakes as a 2-year-old, had to have triple Bayard, had to be fairly recent. And the most important part was the runner had to have avoided the rigors of the Triple Crown Trail, which largely implied the West Virginia Derby was the target, the be-all, end-all of the campaign for a West Virginia Derby winner. And that profile was inviolate. You just could not violate it or beat it for years and years and years. But now the race has been diminished a little bit, has come down in the world. And I'm not sure there is a pattern that necessarily works, except you want a now horse in the West Virginia Derby. And I think we've got 4 stakes winners for this. So it's not a bad little bunch. Nobody really sticks out to join the annals along with Soto or Stellar Brush or horses like that, Cupid, and those kind of runners, I don't think. But still could be a horse race. Although I will say this, J.J. Gray, who was 3 in a row, who was a triple stakes winner, and who was unbeaten, if you read between the lines there and look closely, at a distance of ground on conventional dirt, put up a bigger number than this field can probably touch to back with a near 100 Beyer Fig, and did so on a wet, fast track, a sloppy track that had been sealed. I'm not sure the number was really for real because the place horse just did not have much cred. And that's going to be a common theme as you look at these forms in here. The horses that have been winning or running well have not been in really stiff competition. They've been in with second and, in most cases, third tier 3-year-olds that were getting tested. So J.J. Gray ran high on the Fig scale, a number that would separate him from this field. It's normal in the wake of such a jump, a move forward in figures to regress. J.J. Gray's next number did regress, but this horse was eyeballed, was speed fought all the way around there. So he was more superior than I would say the length and 3/4 margin might lead you to believe. But again, very questionable competition in both those wins for J.J. Gray. Kenny McPeak does not give you any kind of a history to go on running at Mountaineer, whereas you know that an Asmussen has won this race numerous times. You know that a Saffie Joseph has won the race before with Skippy Longstocking. I can't recall Kenny McPeak running anything at Mountaineer. If he has, it's been a long, long time. So I don't know what to make of the trainer factor when it comes to J.J. Gray. This guy certainly knows his way around graded stakes. Does Kenny McPeak, the guy who conditioned Mystic Dan, one of the names that popped up on the past performances. And the race we just watched, and JJ Gray, and this could be his whole card here, is not strictly a need to lead type. He can be rationed a little bit and rated just behind somebody and indulge them for a few furlongs. And that could be critical with Wayne's Law, the 7-horse, the Amador Sanchez runner, adding blinkers and with all the speed that Wayne's Law could bring to this party. Number 7, Wayne's Law. The West Virginia Derby can be won by any running style. I've seen deep closers win it. I've seen it wired, and I've seen it won by efficient pace, stock, and pounce types. Wayne's Law will try to make every pull a winner here. I would say they're throwing the gauntlet down with the blinkers on for Wayne's Law. And Wayne's Law was second to the Sam Davis, good tune-up for the Florida Derby. Comes back in the Florida Derby and runs his best ever number to Commandment and the Puma top line 3-year-olds. So Wayne's Law was on a good path there. And then for whatever reason, they tried him on turf and that backfired. But looked last time like he'd lost a little bit off his fastball when he was sprinting 7/8 there, because the horse looked not unsuited to a sprint distance. So he definitely has regressed, it seems like, based on what he had done and where he seemed headed, but probably finds himself in front here. And Amador Sanchez knows how to win races at the mountain, and this horse is probably going to be a big price. Steve Asmussen has won the race before. If you look at the trainer factor, like 6 times he owns it, never shows up, never makes the scene. Guarantees not in the paddock here. And it seems like he sends lesser and lesser and lesser stock year after year. And that's inevitable. It always happens. When a trainer dominates and dominates and dominates at any meet or any specific race, it's only human nature to see if they can send lesser stock and still succeed at the same rate. So Asmussen seems to send lesser runners in every year for the big race at Mountaineer. And this year sends a maiden, an outright maiden in Maximum Effort. I don't know if this horse is any Acheli or not, a Maximum Effort, but a maiden's a maiden. And he's never even tipped 90 on the Beyer Speed Fig scale. Number 6, Maximum Effort. Some folks will be looking hard at Zenol here. Zenol on number 5, the jockey. Velasquez for sure is a plus point. And this horse might be an ever 2 who worked really hard to win by 1 body length in a maiden special weight race 2 back, but definitely raised his game at 23 to 1. I'm sorry, definitely raised his game at 20 to 1 last time. He was squeezed a bit at the start, and that compromised him because I think he can get some position if that doesn't happen. And the horse that beat him could be any kind. That was a never 2, but a horse that had one debut for no less a conditioner than Brad Cox. So the horse that beat Zenol there at Indy in a graded stakes could have some upside. And I've seen years where the Indy Derby sent some pretty strong contenders that ran like it in the West Virginia Derby. So this might be the horse with the future. Zenol, although JJ Gray is much more accomplished. And it seems like further along the learning curve and faster on the vaunted Beyer Speed Fig scale. And then you come to the no-hopers, such as Bull by the Horns on the outside, who's a stakes winner, but a stakes winner on synthetics, and got his head handed to him in the Ohio Derby, which really wasn't that tough, I didn't think, with Chip Honcho, the winner. And let me check out where we're at in the paddock here. And we are still in the paddock, 0 to post, but they're not going to be in any big hurry here, I don't think, at all. And number 3, Trendsetter, was in the Ohio Derby last time and finished 3rd. The race set up for a closer, so he was where he was supposed to be well back in the early stages. And he is slowly advancing in the Speed Fig column. Trendsetter seems to be trending in the right direction. Trendsetter. He's a graded stakes winner at 1 mile and a 16th is a Trendsetter. It seems like he hung a little bit in his next couple of starts, though, at 1 mile and an 8th. They're both graded races, but this horse doesn't really punch real hard late at a distance of ground and was in front at the 8th pole in his big upset win there at 32 to 1 in the Lexington at Keeneland on April the 11th. So I think he's a little suspect in the late stages is Trendsetter. Zenol, who's in front at the 8th pole and only has the 1 win, and that's at 1 mile 70 in a maiden race. He might be a little suspect in the late stages. Wayne's Law, stamina would be the issue for him. And we're looking at a Maximum Effort here too. Maximum Effort. He's not exactly a passer of opponents in his own right there. Maximum Effort. You can't be much of a passer of opponents to still be a maiden. So, I mean, who's really going to be coming after JJ Gray if he assumes the position in front, either early or by the time they turn for home lower turn there, presumably after dispatching possible pace setter Wayne's Law. I mean, who's really coming at him in the late game there, J.J. Gray, who was lower than the morning line. Who didn't know that was going to happen? But I would suspect he will go even lower than the 7-5 you're looking at right now. Of course, the track record and stakes record for this 9 furlong West Virginia Derby went to the great Soto, who exited the Derby undefeated, a big red wonder horse. Soto, who was as long as a choo-choo train, and I think suffered defeat in his next outing, the PA Derby. I don't think he was right. I think he had some physical issues, and he was cleverly managed and conditioned by the great mad genius, Michael Dickinson. Soto, in the process of running the fastest ever mile and an eighth at Mountaineer and winning the West Virginia Derby, recorded the biggest Beyer speed fig in the history of Mountaineer route races, 114, which only takes a back seat to the 2 stupendous numbers, the otherworldly figures put up by the great Fabulous Strike in the sophomore sprint, the Christmas handicap. And Fabulous Strike would go on to affirm his class with a win in the Grade 1. I think it was the Losberg, it might have been. He did become a Grade 1 winner, Fabulous Strike, and would compete in the Breeders' Cup Sprint also. But the track record for the mile and eighth distance was put up appropriately enough in the West Virginia Derby by the great Soto, who in the process recorded the top ever Beyer speed fig for Mountaineer 2-turn event. And I call them the Twin Towers at Mountaineer. Fabulous Strike and Soto, the 2 best horses ever to step foot on the mountain main. I think that is almost indisputable. 7-5 on J.J. Gray. I do suspect that his breakout speed fig, a little bit questionable because it was on a wet sealed track, but it is normal to regress at a subsequent start. I like that pattern after a horse runs a breakout number, and he is unbeaten in route races on dirt. Not that he establishes any towering class standard, because the company lines here, and I'm not going to detail them much or do a deep dive on the company lines because the company has not been good behind J.J. Gray. But the same can be said with the Ohio Derby this year and the Peter Pan and a few of these races that some of these others exit. If you want to find somebody tough, you got to go back to Renegade, who beat Wayne's Law when Wayne's Law still looked like an up-and-comer. And the Sam Davis. And Renegade, of course, had his name back in the news recently with a big win at Saratoga. But quality running lines, quality company lines are at a premium in here. You don't see that a lot. And I used to try and hustle them and recruit quality running lines and name horses for the West Virginia Derby, although it kind of backfired. I was a chief recruiter and one of the driving forces in propelling the race to Grade 2 status. And it would sometimes backfire when you'd go out and get a Mind That Bird or go out and get a horse who had some name brand recognition out of the Triple Crown races, because it was an almost impregnable rule, a law of the West Virginia Derby, the way it used to be, that the horses that had undergone the rigors of competing in any of the Triple Crown races were spent, were over the top. When they would come for the West Virginia Derby as an afterthought, they would get their asses kicked by now horses on the come. Not name brand horses, but horses for whom the West Virginia Derby had been the be-all, the end-all of their campaigns right from the jump. And I kind of see that in J.J. Gray, the winning profile here in J.J. Gray. He embodies some of the components of what the winning profile used to be for the West Virginia Derby. Every year there's some kind of a wise guy horse, it seems like. And this year it is Xenol, mainly because of the jock, I would say, in large part, but also because I think a lot of folks are going to interpret more upside here because he is the least experienced horse in the race. And also because who knows what kind of horse it was that beat him last time. That second time starter out of the Brad Cox barn, out of the potent Brad Cox barn. So we're 0 to post, and 3-2, I think, is a fair price on JJ Gray. I think a lot of players would not necessarily agree with that, but I expected him to go maybe 6-5 or even here. I'm a little bit surprised that he's holding sway there at even $5 for each deuce you bet. So I think I'm going to bet a little bit on JJ Gray here, guys. Nobody in here obviously is one of the 9 furlong distance guys. Just to add a little bit to my commentary here, JJ Gray does not have to carry his track around with him. He has won at Prairie Meadows and also at Oaklawn Park. That's class to win any other than. And also at the fairgrounds and Colonial on the turf. So he's versatile. He's a racehorse and does not have to carry his track around with him, huh? So both the big races are runaways, and both those win purses go to the legendary Johnny V, who raked in about $40,000 for his bank account by my quick math this afternoon. And Bobby from Massachusetts, an astute observer, sums it up really well. Johnny V always works out the best trips. Could have gotten squeezed at the start. That is so true, Bobby boy, but knifed his way through there. I said in advance, his marching orders, his mission there was going to be to get this horse close to the pace, because Zenal was shuffled back last time at the start and won with position time before last. So they wanted some kind of position, and they got it. And the jock was part of that. He could have got shuffled back at the break there, but knifed. And that's a good way to term it, Bobby. Knifed his way through to go up and just lay on that pace that who folded right on cue, a horse that has definitely regressed and deteriorated. Wayne's Law as J.J. Gray's just a non-factor there. And the horse with the upside, the least experienced horse in the field. And this year's Wise Guy horse, it seems like he was pounded down to half that 6-1 morning line, as if the Mountaineer morning line means anything from what we saw earlier today. And I must have talked to 3 or 4 serious players this afternoon on text and on the phone who expressed a lot of interest in Zenal. So he was this year's Wise Guy horse. And for once, the Wise Guys are right, is that this horse may go on to represent well moving forward. Another West Virginia Derby in the books. Enjoyed hanging out with you guys. I used to feel like somebody died or Christmas was gone, like after the West Virginia Derby ran. I don't quite feel that way since I'm no longer employed at Mountaineer, but it's almost like an end of summer right for me. Is fall. It feels like fall the minute they cross the wire in the West Virginia Derby, and the next year's countdown starts. Almost like Christmas. Not necessarily a memorable one, but it was won by a memorable margin there. I wonder if that was one of the biggest margins in the history of the races. Both of the feature races today, the Governors and the West Virginia Derby, were taken by these incredible margins. Those respective winners just raced right off the screen. Hope you guys enjoyed it. By your leave, I'm going to split and go upstairs and have a normal life, eat some dinner, and hang out with a little bit of my man. And I'm going to pass the last race. I hope you guys did well wagering this afternoon. My profits were socked away early with that incredible 5-2 value on Back on Track in race number 2, who I consider a far likelier winner than Silent Rule, who was like 1-9 in the virtual match race. And then another horse that I bet pretty big on was Beach Colt. Not so good for me in the Derby or the Governors, but that's why they call them horse races. So I see where we went past 300 subscribers. Next in sight, 500 guys. So stick with me. And please tout my YouTube channel if you get a shot to. So thanks for hanging out with me in the dungeon. Back to normal Mountaineer card tomorrow. Some decent chance of rain, so I would not necessarily pre-handicap for turf. Enjoy this West Virginia Derby day. And back with you tomorrow. Mark Patterson out.